Have you ever looked around at your life and thought, why does this keep happening to me? Why do the same arguments happen in different relationships? Why do you keep sabotaging opportunities? Why do you avoid difficult conversations, then feel resentful afterward? Why do you know what needs to change, but still struggle to change it? Today we're talking about something most people avoid because it's uncomfortable: functional impairments and the power of ownership. But before we get started, if this content helps you better understand yourself, relationships, emotional healing, and personal growth, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who may need to hear this message. And just a reminder, this content is educational and informational only and is not intended to replace therapy, mental health treatment, diagnosis, or professional counseling services. Let's get into it. Most people think functional impairments only apply to severe mental illness or extreme dysfunction, but that's not true. Functional impairments can show up in very subtle ways. You can be highly intelligent and still struggle emotionally. You can own a business and still avoid accountability. You can appear successful while privately struggling with emotional regulation, communication, boundaries, or self-awareness. A functional impairment is simply an area where your emotional, behavioral, or psychological patterns interfere with your ability to function effectively in life. That can affect relationships, parenting, communication, work, emotional stability, decision-making, trust, conflict resolution, consistency, self-control. And here's the difficult part. Many people don't recognize their impairments because they've normalized them. If you grew up in chaos, dysfunction can feel normal. If you grew up emotionally dismissed, avoidance can feel normal. If you survive by shutting down emotionally, emotional detachment can feel normal. Sometimes the very thing protecting you is also limiting you. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone named Marcus. Marcus is dependable at work, pays his bills, shows up for people when they need help. From the outside, he looks stable. But in his relationships, he struggles deeply with communication. Whenever conflict happens, he shuts down. He avoids difficult conversations. He disappears emotionally. His partner feels unheard and disconnected. Now Marcus tells himself, I just hate drama. But the reality is, Marcus never learned how to tolerate emotional discomfort. His avoidance is functioning like protection. The problem is, what protects you from discomfort can also prevent intimacy, growth, and healing. That's what self-awareness begins to uncover. Self-awareness is not simply knowing your personality traits. True self-awareness means being able to honestly observe your triggers, your patterns, your defense mechanisms, your emotional reactions, your impact on other people, not just your intentions. That part is important because many people focus on intentions while ignoring impact. You may not intend to hurt people. You may not intend to manipulate. You may not intend to avoid responsibility, but impact still matters. Ownership begins when we stop asking, did I mean to? And start asking, what effect did my behavior have? That shift changes everything. Now let's talk about why ownership feels so difficult. Because ownership often activates shame. And many people confuse ownership with self-condemnation. Ownership is not, I'm a horrible person. Ownership is, I need to acknowledge my behavior honestly so I can grow. There's a difference. A person lacking ownership often explains away every behavior. They blame stress, their childhood, their partner, their trauma, their anxiety, their workload, their past. Now to be clear, context matters, trauma matters, pain matters, mental health matters. But explanations are not the same as accountability. Healing requires both compassion and responsibility. Here's another example. A woman repeatedly finds herself in emotionally unavailable relationships. Every relationship ends with her feeling abandoned. Eventually, she realizes something difficult. She ignores red flags because emotional inconsistency feels familiar to her nervous system. That realization hurts because now she has to confront the fact that her choices were influenced by unresolved wounds. But this is where growth begins, not in blame, not in denial, but in awareness. Awareness gives you choices. And without awareness, patterns repeat automatically. One of the biggest signs of emotional growth is when a person becomes capable of self-reflection without immediately becoming defensive. That's hard, because defensiveness is usually protection. When people feel criticized, exposed, rejected, or ashamed, they often deflect, shut down, attack back, minimize, rationalize, avoid. But mature healing requires the ability to pause and ask, is there truth in what I'm hearing? Not all criticism is accurate, but some of it may reveal blind spots. And blind spots are dangerous because you cannot change what you refuse to see. Here's something else people don't talk about enough. Self-awareness without action changes nothing. You can understand your trauma and still repeat unhealthy behaviors. You can identify your triggers and still avoid accountability. Insight is powerful, but applied insight creates transformation. That means practicing emotional regulation, learning communication skills, setting boundaries, repairing relationships, apologizing sincerely, building consistency, becoming emotionally honest. Growth is not proven by words. Growth is proven by patterns changing over time. And sometimes ownership means grieving the version of yourself you thought you were. That can be painful, especially when someone realizes, I've hurt people. I've avoided responsibility. I've been emotionally unavailable. I've blamed others for patterns I contributed to. But avoidance delays healing. Ownership accelerates it. Because once you become aware, you gain power. Not control over everything, but power over your decisions moving forward. So if you've been feeling stuck lately, ask yourself, what patterns keep repeating in my life? What discomfort do I constantly avoid? How do I respond when someone gives me feedback? Do I take responsibility or immediately become defensive? What behaviors have I normalized that may actually be impairing my relationships or emotional health? Those questions can change your life. And remember, self-awareness is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming honest. Ownership is not punishment. It's the doorway to growth. And healing often begins the moment we stop running from ourselves. If this video spoke to you, make sure you subscribe, like, and share this message with someone who may be struggling with these same patterns. And if you want more content on emotional healing, relationships, trauma patterns, self-awareness, boundaries, and personal growth, let me know in the comments what topics you'd like covered next. And one final reminder, this content is for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace therapy, mental health treatment, or professional counseling services. Thank you for watching.